So the key to success in life is going with the natural flow of life rather than struggling against it. And your intuition is one of the most powerful tools that you have to help you do that. It's there for you all the time. It works flawlessly. So learn to understand it and to rely on it, and you'll be amazed at what happens. Hi, I'm Liam Naden, and welcome to my podcast, Let Yourself Off the Hook. As someone who has studied success for decades, I have found the formula for achieving your dreams and goals, and it's all to do with how you use your brain. Each week on my show, I will provide you with the tools, resources, and expertise to utilize your brain to its ultimate potential and remove the barriers to your success. And as you will discover, true success in every area of your life only comes when you let yourself off the hook. We've all had that feeling when there's something not right in our life, when something isn't the way it used to be, and there's a voice telling us that we should be doing something completely different to what we're doing. Maybe it's that relationship we're in that's no longer what it used to be, and we're thinking, I should leave. Or we're in the wrong job, and a voice is telling us that. But whatever it is, it's a voice, and we tend to bury it. We shut it out, we justify the problem, we say things aren't that bad. Really? And we go to work on trying to fix the problem. But the problem never goes away, and in fact it probably gets worse. And eventually something happens where we say to ourselves, I should have listened to myself. Now we call this little voice of uncomfortable truth, we call that intuition. But what really is it? Does it actually exist? And if so, how can we use it effectively in our lives rather than it just being an annoying random thing? Well, actually, your intuition is the key to getting everything that you really want in your life, if you know how to use it the right way. And that's what we're going to cover in this episode. And we're going to look at what intuition really is, the scientific evidence for what it is, how and when to use it effectively, and how you're already using it without realizing it, what's getting in the way of you using it consistently, and how you can use it not in a random way, but in a much more powerful, predictable, and effective way to make a measurable improvement to your life. First off, let's talk about what is intuition. Now, of course, we've all heard about it, and it's been described as that gut feeling, that inner feeling, that voice within. And we've also all been told that you should trust your intuition. You should learn to allow it to guide you. The dictionary definition that I found for intuition is something one knows or understands from instinctive feeling rather than conscious reasoning. Now, what this really means is there's a distinction between something that you feel and know instinctively and something that's in your conscious thoughts. So it's different to your normal thoughts. It's different to the thoughts that you have when you're trying to figure out the solution to a problem or work out what to do. It's different. Now, of course, you've probably experienced this. And if you have used your intuition from time to time, you'll know that there's a few things about it that make it special and unique. And the first thing is really what we've just mentioned, that it's an idea or a thought that brings with it a sense of knowing. You just feel that it's right. Of course, you might deny it, but deep down, there's a feeling that, yes, there's something about this that feels like the truth. An example could be, say, a business relationship. Maybe you're working with somebody, or maybe you've employed somebody in your business, and they're just not working out. It's just not working out right. And part of you is saying, I'm going to make it work. This can make it happen, and I can't find anyone else for the job, or they are the best person for the job that I could find anyway. But there's a voice in you which still says, this isn't right. This person isn't right for the job. And you just know that. It's not what you want to hear, but you just know that that's the truth. The second thing about intuition is that it's a thought or a feeling or an idea that somehow feels like it comes from somewhere else. And we often say when we get this knowing feeling or this moment of insight or this idea, we think, where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? And it's true. It does come from a different place in your brain, literally a different physical location inside your brain. The third thing about intuition is that it can't be controlled or forced. An idea that comes from your intuition, it just comes to you. You can't control when it comes. Usually it's quite unexpected. Most often you get these ideas, these moments of insight or truth that come from your intuition. You get them when you're focused on doing something completely different, something else. You might have been wrestling with a problem or trying to figure something out for quite a while and spent a lot of time and energy on it. And yet the answer comes to you when you're doing something else or when you wake up, when you're not thinking about the issue or the problem at all. The next thing about your intuition is that it's always right. Now, as I said earlier, we might fight against it. We might try to disprove the idea. We might argue against what it says. We might even rationalize it and say, well, this isn't right, but it will always prove in the end to be right. Now, that might take some time, but it will always end up being the right answer, the right idea. And I see this very often in relationships and in people in their business. They know the right answer. It's come to them, but they fight against it. And sometimes people can be, and maybe you've experienced this, you can be in a relationship, either a romantic relationship or marriage, or in a business relationship, or have a part of your business. And you can have this carry on for years and years, and you're trying to work with it when the right answer all along was that you should have ended that relationship. Because here's the next thing about your intuition. When you don't follow it, when you don't act on it, you're going to end up with problems. And what life becomes when you don't follow your intuition is you're spending all your time trying to fix problems. And usually, or very often, they're problems that would never have existed, wouldn't be there if you'd simply followed your intuition in the first place. But here's the really interesting thing about intuition. If it's always right, and if we don't act on it, all we do is create problems that take us an enormous amount of time and energy to try to fix, then why don't we use it all the time? Well, the real reason for that, and what we're going to explore in this episode, is we don't really understand what it is. And like everything else, if we don't understand something, that makes us afraid. And we don't understand that we're not going to be given the right answer without the means to achieve it. And for everything to turn out the best if we follow it. So we raise doubts in our mind and we say, will that work? Surely there's another easier way. I don't like the sound of that. And we try to figure out another way, an easier way to do it, rather than to go with the advice of our intuition. So we don't act on it. In fact, we often do the opposite. And we stay stuck, frustrated, never making progress, and saying to ourselves, deep down, it's probably right, but I don't like the thought of it, so I'll try something else. And I'll be really determined and motivated and put in all sorts of effort, and I'll make it happen. I'll get a different result to what my intuition is telling me, and everything will work out. So we stay stressed and stuck in this heroic mindset. I will reach my goal. I will reach the goal that I set for myself, not the goal that my intuition is telling me. I'm going to set a different goal. And again, this really just results in us staying stuck. It's like flogging a dead horse. We're stuck with chaos and confusion, not making any progress. Here's another important thing to know about intuition, and that is it's always available to us. It's always there. We might not hear it all the time, but it's always there. And it's always there for whenever we need it to guide us and make sure that we do the right thing. So again, we need to ask ourselves, if it's available all the time, and if it's right every time, then how can I use it? Well, you only need to know 3 things, or only do 3 things. And really, this is the same for any technique or strategy or method. or anything that can help improve your life. And those three things are, firstly, we need to understand something about how and why it works. Secondly, we need to know how to make it work. And thirdly, we need to prove to ourselves that it does work. And that comes from actually using it and developing the habit of using it enough so that we actually see results. Think about this as an example for a moment. Think about a motor car. Now, if you'd never seen a motor car before in your life and you had no clue about what it was or how it worked, then you'd probably do all sorts of strange things that didn't work to try and get a result. So you might look at the motor car and say, well, I understand it's designed to get me somewhere, but I don't know how it works, so I'll just try pushing it. And then it didn't work. But once you started to understand how it worked, you'd use it in a different way. You'd get in and you'd use the buttons and levers in a particular way. Now, you might not be very good at it. You might not get good results. You might stall the engine, or you might go very slowly, or it might be very uncomfortable. But you realize that you need to practice. You need to use it in a different way to get the right result. But once you do that, once you practice enough and turn it into a habit, it becomes easy and it makes life so much better for you. That's the same with your intuition. So let's talk a little bit about what your intuition really is and how it works. Now, we talked earlier that it comes from a part of your brain that's not the same as where your rational thoughts come from. It comes from a part of your brain that works more naturally, from a sense of knowing and allowing, rather than forcing and struggle and trying to put in a lot of unnecessary energy. Now, this is the part of your brain which I call the creative brain. It's not your rational thinking brain. And this is the part of your brain that contains faculties, not only intuition, but also creativity, imagination, resourcefulness, awareness, motivation. These all come from a different part of your brain. And this is the part of your brain that's designed to drive your life, to allow you and make sure that you are the best that you can be, so that you have the greatest chance for your survival, which is your biological purpose. So this creative brain, it guides you to do the right things. It guides you to come up with the right ideas. It motivates you. And it does all of this in every moment of your life. Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. But there's only one time when it doesn't do that, and that's when you're faced with an immediate threat or a danger or something that might harm you. And in those times, which might only be once or twice in your life, if ever, that you're actually faced with a real threat, a different part of your brain comes into play, which is your survival or your fight or flight part of your brain. And when that part of your brain is active, your creative brain, including your intuition, your creativity, and everything else you need to really solve your problems, that's all shut down. And how this works is the survival brain, the fight or flight part, when it's activated and when it's shutting down the creative part of your brain, this happens through fear. Fear, anxiety, worry, and stress literally activate the survival, fight or flight part of your brain and shut down the creative part of your brain, including your intuition. And because of this, the right ideas will only come to you when you're not feeling stressed, worried, and afraid. And haven't you found this in your life, that when you're actually focused on, say you've got a big problem that you're dealing with, but when you change your attention and maybe go off and do something that you enjoy, you might get the solution. But here's the other thing. When you're not feeling stressed, worried, and anxious, that's the only time when you're really feeling motivated to do the right things, to take the right actions. Now, it's another topic which we'll cover in another episode, but fear is not a motivator. When you're feeling stressed, worried, and anxious, that doesn't help you to do the right things. All it does is get you to react and make rash decisions and do the wrong things. And it's all because that when you feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety, you're activating a different part of your brain that's not the resource-based part of your brain. You literally can't see the right answer. You can't see the right thing to do. Here's an example of this at work. Imagine you have a friend who's in a stressful situation. Perhaps they don't like their job, or they're having problems in their business, or problems in their relationship. And you can see very clearly what they should do. You know what they should do. You know the right answer, which is probably to end the relationship, or certainly act in a completely different way to the way they are acting, or do something radically different about their business or whatever, or their job. Now, you know the answer, but they can't see it. They literally can't see that that's the answer. And the reason is they don't have access to that part of their brain, because the problem-solving part of their brain, because they're in fear, they're in stress, and that's shutting down that part of their brain. But here's the other thing when you're feeling stressed, worried, and anxious, and blocking out your intuition, is not only can't you see the right answer, not only are you not allowing your intuition to show you the right answer, but even if you could, the fear, stress, and worry literally stops you from taking the right actions, from acting on it. And instead, what do? We spend all of our energy and all of our mental resources in putting it through the filter of another part of our brain, which is our rational thinking brain. And we try and think of the solution. We try and come up with the answer. So we analyze it. We say, is this right? Will this work? What are all the pros and the cons of doing this? What would happen if I did this? What would happen if I didn't do this? Is there another way? Is there a better way to do this? But here's the funny thing. That rational thinking part of our brain is not our creative brain. So it doesn't actually know the answers to any of those questions. And because we can never really know the answers to those questions using our thoughts, using our thinking brain, what does that create? It creates doubt, uncertainty. And when we have doubt and uncertainty, that stops us from doing anything. Or we just rush into doing the wrong thing. We just react. And of course, if it doesn't keep us stuck, it just makes things worse. So the important thing to realize is your intuition comes from a part of your brain that knows exactly what you need for you to have the best life possible, which, remember, is your biological purpose. You're here to survive and to thrive and be the best that you can be. So it knows what you need to live the best life possible. And also, it knows exactly what you need to do to get there. But, and here's an important point, but it will only show it to you one step at a time. Now, sometimes it's going to show you the end goal, and sometimes it won't. So sometimes your intuition will say to you, I'm going to marry that person. That's the right person for me. Or, that's the wrong person for me. So sometimes it might show you the end goal, other times it won't. It will always show you the next step, but it's never going to show you the steps in between where you are, the next step, and the ultimate goal. And the reason it doesn't do that is because you don't actually need to know what all those steps are. All you need to know is the next step, and you just need to take it. Because taking that next step is what's going to get you to the right place. Not knowing the next 20 steps, you only need to know the next step and just do it. So it's important, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's important you don't try and figure out the next 20 steps. It's not part of the natural process. So this is all about understanding that first thing we talked about. You need to understand how and why your intuition works, how it really works. And we've already talked about the second thing, which is how to make it work. And the most important way to make it work consistently and reliably and predictably, and to be able to use it effectively in your life, is to realize what stops it from working, which is your feelings of fear, stress, worry, and anxiety. So you've literally got to do what you can to avoid anything in your life that makes you feel bad. Because when you do feel bad, you are literally activating the wrong part of your brain, your survival, fight or flight part, that's going to block your intuition from working. So instead of getting all stressed and worried and frustrated about your problems or the thing you're trying to work out or the thing that you feel in your life isn't working the way you think it should or the way you want it to, instead of overthinking and feeling all that stress and trying to force it to happen, allow, trust, allow. Where have you heard that before? Have faith. Do not be afraid. Believe. Allow. Trust. It's the way your brain works. It's the way it's naturally designed to work. And how do you prove it works? Which is, of course, the third step, because once you prove to yourself, once you see it in action and you see it working, then you really will trust. You really will allow. And it's not a trust or allowing that comes from blind ignorance. It's because you know that's just the way it works. And when you think about it, most of your life is built on trust. You don't worry about every single thing that's happening in your life and in the world around you. You just know that's the way it works. You'd go mad if you tried if you were question everything about the way it works rather than understanding it's just the way it works. So it's the same with your intuition, and it's the same with using your brain the right way. Once you understand it works and you see it working, you don't need to worry about it. You just naturally do it that way because it's logical. It's not based on any faith or forcing yourself to try and believe something. So, of course, how do you prove to yourself that it works? Well, it's the same with anything. How do you prove anything works? You start to practice using it. Even if you're afraid and unsure to start with, even if you're not sure, well, maybe I'm not used to this. I'm not used to using this in this way. So, of course, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but I'm just going to try it and see what happens. So, try it with small things to start with. Try using your intuition on small things and see what happens. And that will prove to you just how effective it is. So, for instance, if you feel, I really should tell that person how I feel or say something to them, and what's stopping me is my fear about what they might say or how they might react, but my intuition tells me I should say it. So just say it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Probably nothing too bad. And don't worry about making a mistake, because again, mistakes or the fear of making a mistake is just that. It's just a fear, and it stops you from taking action. So don't worry about making a mistake. Just try it. It's not going to be the end of the world if it doesn't work out the way you expect. You know, your intuition is just such a powerful tool. And using it the right way really is as simple as just starting to use it, just trying it. And here are a few other ideas on how you can use your intuition more effectively. The first thing is you've got to start getting in the habit of putting aside your rational thinking brain. In other words, stop trying to come up with answers to everything. Stop trying to analyze things and evaluate and search out for more information and decide and feel that you have to make a decision. This is all your rational brain. It's not your creative brain at work. So start to experiment and put aside your thinking, your thoughts, all of this noise that's going on in your head, which most of the time or a lot of the time you know isn't helping anyway, and say to yourself, I'm not going to find the answer here because it's not there. The answer is not in your thinking brain. So say that to yourself from time to time. When you find yourself overthinking, I'm not going to find the answer there, so I'm going to stop looking there. It's not there. Another thing to do, and this is in some ways quite similar, but spend some time away from your thoughts so that you can actually allow your intuition to make itself heard. Imagine being in a conversation where someone's trying to talk to you and they've got a fairly quiet voice and they're trying to say something to you really important and something that could really help you, and you're shouting at them at the top of your voice with all of this stuff all the time. Now, how can you possibly get the right message, learn anything, get the right ideas or thoughts on what to do if you're not listening? You can't hear it if you're shouting. So switch off this thinking brain all the time. Go and do something else. This is why this is so effective. Stop thinking about your problem or whatever the issue is. Go and do something completely different. Do something you really enjoy. Don't feel that you have to work and struggle on that problem because, as you know by now, that doesn't work. Another time that I find really effective to allow my intuition, this intuitive voice to start to speak to me, is when I first wake up in the morning. You're in that state where you haven't quite started thinking yet. Your thinking brain hasn't started fully engaging and carried away with all of your thoughts and frustrations and the pressures of the day. So it's like that twilight zone, just at the beginning of the day when you haven't quite woken up. And just stop and just start to become a little bit aware and listen. Very often you're going to get some really powerful ideas and insights that come to you at that time of the day. You could also do it just before you go to sleep, although I find first thing in the morning to be more effective. Listening to your intuition is actually quite simple. Not necessarily easy to start with, but like most new habits and most effective things in life, it is simple, but as I said, it's not easy to start with. It requires you to do things differently and get into a new habit. And one of the most important things we can realize about life, and if we look around us in the natural world, of which we are actually a part, we realize this is true, is that living an ideal life is not actually designed to be difficult. An ideal world is natural. That's what we're part of. We're part of a beautiful world that isn't driven by stress and problems, but is driven by perfection. And it's not difficult and complicated. Life is not difficult and complicated. Life just flows. Life just is. But it's our survival brain, with all our fears, frustrations, anxieties, and limited thinking that it contains, that's what makes it difficult, or that's what makes life appear difficult and complicated when it really isn't. Confucius said, life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. So the key to success in life is going with the natural flow of life rather than struggling against it. And your intuition is one of the most powerful tools that you have to help you do that. It's there for you all the time. It works flawlessly. So learn to understand it and to rely on it, and you'll be amazed at what happens. Also open yourself up to the possibility that there's a part of your brain that has good things in store for you, things that you couldn't even dream of or comprehend right now. And this has happened to me so many times in my own life. I remember back in 2014, my partner and I, we were in New Zealand and we packed everything down to a suitcase and bought a one-way ticket to Europe. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were doing, but we just thought it was time to try something different. And from that one step, amazing things happened. I spent 8 years sailing around Europe on a yacht. It was never part of my goals list, my dream, my thoughts, my ideas at all, but it showed up. And I know this is the way life is biologically designed to be. We're supposed to use our intuition and allow our brain, our creative brain, to make our life unfold in the best possible way. It's only when we get bogged down with stress, fear, worry, and anxiety, which is when we activate a different part of our brain, that's what locks us into our problems. That's what prevents us from experiencing all of the things we're supposed to experience in our life, and we end up experiencing other things that we're not so keen on. So start to learn how to use your intuition in a way that is really going to help you. And allow magic to happen in your life. And it will, in amazing ways, when you learn to rely on your intuition and the other wonderful tools that you have locked up inside your brain.